access to this. And as an introduction, very, very excited to have Nick Fox here with us. So we chatted, gosh, it's been a couple months ago, I think, about this, because Wim Hof, I think some of you that are on here know Wim Hof, and you've been practicing some of his tactics. Some of you might be new. And so it's just really kind of interesting. What really intrigued me more was the cold therapy, but I think the breathing also has a ton of value, especially in our stressful lives today. So he's going to share with us a lot of that information. But a little bit about Nick. He has been practicing the Wim Hof method since 2020, went to Poland in January of 2022 to complete a certification as an instructor. He's taught philosophy, history, and art at both the high school and college level for 10 years. He's also an airborne ranger Army officer that spends his summers training cadets at the military academy in West Point, New York. When he's not playing Army, he's reading and trying to write short stories and building with his young kids. Recently, he became Oxygen Advantage certified and helps clients with functional breathing, CO2 tolerance, and much more. He conducts monthly workshops in Minneapolis. So you're going to hear about the one that we are going to be hosting together in September, as well as around the Midwest. He teaches people deep conscious breathing, cold exposure techniques in his new adventure, and he looks forward to helping you explore your inner strengths. So with that, I am so excited to hear you, Nick. So I'm going to go ahead and pin you. There we go. Oh, now we got to get your slides. How do we do this?
Okay. Well, yeah, I can't. Can you hear me? It's good.
Yeah, but hang on a second. So what happened? We can just take our
I can see the slides.
Yeah, when I pinned him though, we saw him only.
Oh, I saw the slides and him.
No, where's Nick? Nick, are you here?
I'm still here.
Where did you go? There you are. Okay. So let's just, everybody that's on video and on the, oh yeah, if you got stuff going on in the background, please mute. But we'll mute unless we have a question. Okay, so let's do that. And with that, very excited. Sorry.
All right. Thank you, Cindy. If you can't hear me or something happens, someone just jump on and bug me. I was telling Cindy, I actually, when I was teaching, I taught during the COVID year, both high school and college level. So I got pretty good at it like 3 years ago, but I've forgotten since. So bug me at any time. I'm used to talking to people in person now and them asking questions about what's going on. So by all means do that. So yeah, Wim Hof, like Cindy said, I've been practicing for a little over 3 years now. And really the Wim Hof method has been the gateway for me into all different types of breathwork modalities, especially. So today I'm just going to take you through the 3 pillars of the Wim Hof method. It sounds like we have some practitioners out there. So some of this might sound familiar. And then of course, ideally in a workshop, we can go even deeper into the practice and I can talk more about what just happened because I do both the breath work and the cold exposure in the workshops. So I'm just going to jump right in with the namesake, Wim himself. So, I first came across the Wim Hof method because a friend of mine sent me an email and the subject line said, maybe your autonomic nervous system isn't so automatic. And when I got that, I had no idea what the autonomic nervous system was, but there was a picture like this of a guy with his shirt off and his shoes off, no hat, at the top of a mountain balancing, surrounded by snow. And I thought, well, that looks kind of cool. And so I clicked on it and I watched the intro to the Vice documentary. If any of you have seen the Vice documentary of Wim Hof. And so I watched that intro. I was excited about it. And supposedly this was about a Dutch guy that could teach anyone to withstand extreme cold with like very little clothing, which I thought, being from Minnesota was crazy. Like I was taught that you need constantly warm clothing and that you don't go into cold water, especially in the winter. So I showed it to my wife. I said, "Hey, will you watch this with me tonight?" And the fact that she said yes was a sign that something special was about to happen, because we rarely agree on what to watch at night. So we sat down, we watched the Vice documentary together, and I was immediately intrigued. And, just to give you a brief overview, the Vice documentary is Wim Hof, the guy right here in front of you, taking a journalist who is there like as a doubter, is like, this guy says he can teach me certain things. And by the end of the documentary, the journalist is walking up a mountain with his shirt off, talking to the camera, and he's got a big smile on his face. And there's clearly some transformation that has gone on over the time that he's been with Wim. So I was immediately intrigued. And the next day I downloaded the app, and I very reluctantly started to take cold showers. Yes, Vice documentary. Sorry, not nice, Vice. And so as soon as I got the app and started doing the cold exposure, what I wanted to do was, I come from a background of doing very extreme things in both the military and in my civilian life, doing marathons, hiking mountains. I volunteered for the hardest training in the Army that I could get my hands on. And so to me, the cold exposure was just another way to test myself. But when I started doing the breathing, a whole new part of myself opened up that I never knew existed. And I found that I had like another layer of consciousness that I could deal with my mood, my energy, and my body started to change. My face started to change. And even a friend at school told me that I was walking differently. And so this was the beginning of my journey. And I just followed that thread to this point. Eventually, after doing it for a year, I wanted to take a fundamentals course. And I went online to find one, and I found that there was no one in the Midwest that was qualified to do it. So I just thought, well, I'm a teacher, I'm an Army officer, I'll just go learn how to do it and I'll teach people. So that's what I did, went to Poland, and now I am one of two certified instructors in Minnesota, but the other guy is constantly traveling. So that's my story with Wim. But Wim himself is categorized as a motivational speaker and an extreme athlete. He has over 20 Guinness World Records, most of which have to do with him doing things in extreme cold, such as longest ice bath on record. I think it's an hour and 57 minutes. He ran. I want to say it wasn't a full marathon, but it was a long distance above the death zone in Everest. He did a half marathon in the Arctic Circle. Did a marathon in a desert with no water. He's just done these things that just seems to defy science. And after he broke all these records and got the nickname the Iceman, he started to turn his body over to science and make the claim that anyone could do it. And that's where we get the Wim Hof method from. It's when he started to turn over his method and his secrets, which he does not consider secret, to the public. And that's what I've been practicing for the last 3 years and got trained in. Now, some people think when they come to workshops and learn about the Wim Hof method that you become kind of this Jedi by practicing breath work and cold exposure. Even though I think that is possible, I am not at that level yet. And the Wim Hof method has really been distilled into 3 pillars: breath work, deliberate cold exposure, and mindset and commitment. And as you can see, I put some pictures from workshops and my own training of just what that entails. Guided breath work, giving people ice baths up to 2 minutes in a workshop, and then doing other mindfulness and really commitment practices is what it comes down to. Because what I tell people is, you're going to have a great experience the first time you do the breathing. You're going to get a ton of energy and a big dopamine boost when you do an ice bath. But if you really want to see the effects on your mood and your body and how you live in your body, it really does take a certain type of commitment in incorporating the Wim Hof method into a daily practice. Really, is what it comes down to. So, like I said, this is the Wim Hof method now, as we're doing things like this, and I'm a level 1 instructor, so I only do things mostly indoors right now with participants. But when I get qualified as a level 2 instructor, I will be taking people out into nature and doing things like hiking up mountains with shirts off, which everyone out there on the call, I am completely confident that with a little bit of practice and preparation, we could all do it. So I'm just going to jump into, did I skip one? No. Okay. So like I said, the Wim Hof method really opened me up to the power of the breath. Now, I just wanted to start with, before I get into what the breathing techniques with the Wim Hof method is like, is just how I understand the breath now. And really, the breath for me is a gateway into our autonomic nervous system. So those things that you see on the screen, digestion, heart rate, we cannot consciously control these things. And usually those things are determined by our environment. However, breathing, humans are unique in the fact that we can control our breathing. And because we can control our breathing, we can influence what state we are in, whether it's a sympathetic state, which is the fight or flight state, or a parasympathetic state, rest or digest. And this is something that the Wim Hof method really opened me up to. And it started to teach me that by the way I breathe, I can influence how I feel when I'm doing something stressful. And on the flip side, I can induce some energy from putting myself into a stressful state in a calm environment, so I can build resilience while I'm in a comfortable and safe environment, as opposed to trying to build resilience when you're in a dangerous environment. And this is what is called getting top-down control over your nervous system, or aspects of your nervous system. And really, one thing that is misunderstood about the Wim Hof method is actually the breathing puts you into a sympathetic state. And then by playing with that sympathetic state and using that energy for rest, you get this great calm afterwards. And then obviously, we use the cold to induce a stress response, and then we use the breathing to keep ourselves calm while we're in an environment, like a stressful environment. Very basic rule of thumb when it comes to breath work is that if you focus on a fast inhale or a quick inhale, that will generally push you towards a sympathetic state. Whereas if you focus on a slower exhale and focus on that aspect of the breathing, that will push you towards a parasympathetic state, so the rest and digest, which is a good segue into what the Wim Hof breathing actually is. So when you sit down to just do the basic breathing exercise, you do 30 to 40 deep circular breaths, all right? And it may sound something like this. So you do it, and it can be fast, it can be a little slower than that, but you're really focusing on that inhale. You're just letting the exhale go, and you do that. And as you do that, you can find yourself heating up. And actually, one of the things that's happening is that you are inducing a sympathetic state, and you're creating adrenaline. So you're creating energy in your system. But you always do it in a safe, quiet, ideally quiet, but just safe, comfortable location, so that you don't have to go anywhere and respond to any stress. You're just building up energy so that you can then go into a hold. So this is the second part. You hold on that last breath, and you let it go into a neutral lung apnea. And then you hold that position until you feel the urge to breathe. And then when you feel the urge to breathe, you take a full inhale, and you hold with the full lung apnea, that is full with oxygen, for 10 to 15 seconds. And then you let that go. And that is one round of Wim Hof method breathing. And generally, you do that 4 times. You can do it 3 times, you could do it 5 times, 6 times, but in a workshop, we do it 4 times. All right. And a lot of things happen when you do this. Like I said, you build a lot of energy. So you put yourself into a sympathetic state, but then rather than going and doing something like running away from a tiger or attacking someone, you just sit there with that energy and let your body use the energy to heal itself. And one of the other things that happens while you're doing the breathing is that you are making your blood temporarily more alkaline. That is, the acidity is dropping. We live in a culture, and I have a way of life that we eat a lot of foods that are high in acid, and with our constant light and coffee and even alcohol, that stuff is constantly making our body work to keep the acidity levels level. And when you push out all of that CO2, you kick out the acidity and you make your blood more alkaline temporarily. And I tell people it's kind of like changing the oil in your blood. Stress is stored. One of the ways stress is stored is CO2. So by kicking all that CO2 out through the breathing exercises, you actually change the acidity of your blood temporarily and get yourself back to like a normal level really quick. And I mean, the euphoria after it. I mean, usually I'm telling people how this works after I've just led them through the breathing, so they're all feeling good and happy, and they eat it all up. But the euphoria that everyone is usually feeling in the room is very, very palpable. You can just feel that you're in a calm state because, in a way, you just survived a stress response. And another thing that happens in our contemporary lives is that we are constantly, bouncing in these unfinished stress states with email and driving and the way we're moving and the way we're breathing, where our body's constantly trying to keep up with whatever stress state we are in. And this actually completes the cycle, and you feel calm, your breathing returns to normal, and you just feel like you're ready for the day. So that's one of the benefits of it. Another big thing that happens is that when you practice doing breath holds, one of the things it does is that it causes your spleen to release more red blood cells. Red blood cells help carry hemoglobin, and this is the same type of thing that athletes who go and train in high altitude settings are trying to do, is that they're trying to build up their red blood count. So this is another thing that training with breath holds can have an effect on your body. And then the last thing I want to say just about the breathing is that I've really learned how to be a diaphragmatic breather by doing this. And that is breathing deep in your belly. And I lay people down and teach them how to do this in the workshop. But we have a tendency to be chest breathers. We breathe shallow, we breathe into our chest, and we even breathe in through our mouth. But I really encourage people to breathe in through their nose and try to breathe deep into their diaphragm. And when you start using your diaphragm primarily for your breathing, it actually pumps your lymphatic system. And that's one way to detox your system. Your lymphatic system doesn't have its own pump, and the diaphragm actually works as the pump. So that's one benefit of learning how to do this deep conscious breathing and pay attention to using your diaphragm and breathing, especially through your nose, which I'll just end on that, is that nasal breathing, I've been completely converted to nasal breathing as pretty much the only way you should be breathing, both throughout the day and at night. And to encourage it during the night, I even tape my mouth at night. I don't know if there's any mouth tapers out there, but we could have a whole nother Zoom talk about the benefits of nasal breathing, but very simply, it warms up the air, it cleans it, it releases nitric oxide in the system, which helps your muscles really metabolize the oxygen. And like I said, it forces you to use that diaphragm. It goes deeper down into your lungs. We don't use most of our lungs, just like we don't, actually, the way I should put it is that we're actually over breathers, just like we're over eaters, and we should actually be breathing less but deeper. And nose breathing, because it slows down your breath, it's a smaller passageway, can help you do that. So I got far off track there from the Wim Hof basic breathing exercise. But I should just say that when you lay down, coming back to this basic breathing exercise, this is an exercise that you do like by itself. This is not something you walk around throughout the day doing breath holds. You shouldn't be doing that. This is a stressful exercise in certain ways. It feels very good afterwards, but you want to make sure you do it all one piece in a safe environment, either laying down or on a couch or something. Not while you're driving, not while you're, taking a test or on a phone call for work or something. All right. So that's the Wim Hof breathing. I guess I could pause. I think I went through. Oh, there's all my benefits. Do you need to be in a certain state of health before trying this? I tell people. Thanks for the question. I tell people, if you have any worries about it, you should check with your doctor. But it's open for anyone. If you feel comfortable taking a yoga class or a medium intensity workout class, you'd be totally fine doing the Wim Hof breathing. So yes, it's open to all people. The only people that should not be doing it are pregnant people and people with epilepsy. Those are the two big flags. But other than that, it's very safe. And I've had everything from 16-year-olds to 76-year-olds in my workshop. 76 is my oldest. I think I can go higher, but so far that's the oldest person that's been in my workshop. But yeah, thanks for the question. And while I'm on this slide, let me just say, I do it always on an empty stomach first thing in the morning because it kind of sets me up for the day. And in general, just doing the breathing on an empty stomach helps because, then you won't get hiccups. And it's easier to go a little deeper with the diaphragm. And eating food can change the pH of your blood. So let's see, is there any transit? Yes. Well, let's see. Like a type of breathing, Cindy, are you asking like a type of breathing before doing Wim Hof breathing, or like something that's lighter than Wim Hof breathing?
Yeah, I think just like the like Norlie was asking in regards to safety, is there anyone who shouldn't be doing this? So just wondering, because even with cold therapy, I know we're going to talk about how can you transition into like a cold immersion bath. So
Yeah.
is there maybe something that if people feel like they're really far away from what Wim Hof's breathing is
Yeah.
there like a introduction ease into that type of
Yeah, I guess I'll say two things about that. I really do think the Wim Hof breathing is accessible to all folks, and I just tell my participants, if it ever gets too intense for them, to slow down and return to breathing through the nose. Breathing through the nose will take down that energy a little bit, and if you want more energy, you can open up and actually breathe through the mouth for it to get more energy and to get just to get a lot more heat going. So you can do it. I would just say slow down. But there is, like I said, this is breathing for a sympathetic state. But if you wanted to like kind of push into that like sympathetic state without like maybe going all the way, box breathing is a type of breathing that pushes you like 60 to 80%. So like box breathing is very simple in that it's like it's a 5-count inhale, 5-count hold, 5-count exhale, and 5-count hold on the exhale. So you can see why it's called box breathing, and you can do it on any count structure. So 3 in, all around. And that type of breathing will push you up into the sympathetic state, but not so far that you're going to feel kind of some of the lightheadedness or other effects that you might get from the Wim Hof breathing. And then if the box breathing is still too intense, you can just do, 5 in, 5 out, just slow down your breathing and make it cyclical and patterned with no breath holds. And even that will bring you into that'll be calmer. That will not be nearly as intense as doing the Wim Hof breathing. One thing I was going to talk about this later, but maybe this is a good time, is that they just did research. So I don't know if anyone out there listens to Andrew Huberman's podcast, the Stanford neuroscientist, but he does a lot of research and is very interested in both cold exposure and breath work. But he just did a breath work study where he wanted to find out what breathwork modality, if done for 5 minutes, could bring you into a calm state and make you feel recharged afterwards. So kind of like reset your system so you feel in a good mood. And what he found was that doing 5 minutes of physiological sighs was the easiest way to do that. And that is very simple and very safe. And that is, I'll just demonstrate it. You breathe in through the nose twice and you exhale through the mouth. And you breathe in first like 75% into the belly and then 25% into the chest. And you exhale like a sigh. That's why it's called a physiological sigh out of your mouth. So it sounds and looks something like this. And actually, he found just doing that once will help rebalance your nervous system. But doing it for 5 minutes, people reported feeling the most calm compared to meditation, cyclical breathing, like the Wim Hof breathing, and box breathing. Actually, what I think was the other one that he studied. So, yeah, that was kind of a long answer. But if you take anything from this and like you're feeling stressed when you come home from work or like the kids are going nuts, physiological sigh, just do it a couple times. You'll feel better, I promise, just immediately, and you get back on track. But at the end of the day, I do really think the Wim Hof breathing is totally accessible to everybody. You just got to make sure you don't push yourself. And this is a good segue into cold exposure. It's not about finding that pain or that threshold and then trying to push beyond it. It's about finding where you're at, going up to it, and then realizing where that bar is, and then coming back down. And then you find that bar, maybe you push it a little bit more the next time. Like, it's not about really holding your breath until you pass out. Just like cold exposure is not staying in the cold because you said you were going to for 3 minutes and your hands are white and you're shivering. Like, that's not the point of any of this. The point is to slowly build up the resilience of doing these practices. So yeah, I hope that answers the question somewhat, but let's talk about the cold. So when you get into the cold, I just like showing people this is what happens. So the cold is on the left hand side, and getting something like a sauna is on the right hand side. So immediately, let's say, and I'll talk about all different types of cold exposure, but let's just say you get into an ice bath. And I always prepare people for how to do this. I give them a 3-step protocol, so they're all very prepared. So if you want to learn that, you got to come to the workshop. All right, that's going to be my one secret. But this is what's going to happen when you get into cold. Immediately, you're going to get a shot of noradrenaline. And noradrenaline does 2 main things. Number 1, it makes you very alert. And number 2, it causes your capillaries and parts of your cardiovascular system to vasoconstrict. All right, and we all probably know this, is that our hands and our feet immediately start to close up, and it starts sending the blood primarily to the core so that it will keep our vital organs warm. That's why our hands and our feet get cold when we're in a cold environment. So it causes vasoconstriction. It makes us very, very alert. Sorry, the computer keeps asking me if I want to raise my hand because I keep doing all these motions. No. So that's why you see the guy or whatever sex he is with the cold hands and the cold feet. And if you know that going into a cold environment that your hands and your feet are going to get cold, you can already protect against having that being extremely distracting for you while you do your cold exposure. And I can teach you some techniques for that. Another thing that happens is that we have 2 main ways of creating heat in our body, thermogenesis it's called, mechanical and metabolic. Mechanical is movement. When you're in an ice bath, it's obviously hard to move around. But by focusing on the deep breathing, you can actually create heat in your intercostal muscles, which are the muscles around your rib cage. So you can really get some heat from using those muscles while you're in an ice bath without moving around too much. Now, let me just pause there and say 2 things about that. 1, the breathing technique for being in an ice bath is the opposite of the breathing technique that you would do when you're laying down to do Wim Hof breathing. What you want to do, like I said earlier, the general rule of thumb is to put yourself into a parasympathetic state. That rest or digest state is focusing on the exhale. So the shock of the cold is going to be the stressor. So what you want to do is you want to stay calm while your body deals with the shock of the cold. And the way you do that is you want to try to extend that exhale. And my rule of thumb is for every breath that you take in, try to extend the exhale twice as long. So, imagine when you get that shock of the cold, you breathe kind of like that. So you just want to focus on you want to really focus on that exhale, and that exhale is going to encourage you being in a more parasympathetic state. One of the reasons why this is because that exhale and a slow exhale can stimulate what's called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is one of the largest nerves. And they found that when you are able to stimulate that nerve, that actually brings you into that parasympathetic state. So that exhale is really what you want to focus on. And ideally, you can get your breathing to a point when you're doing cold exposure where it's something like a 4 count in and an 8 count out. That something like that would be ideal. But even if you don't get there, you want to double that exhale and bring yourself into that calm state. All right, and that will help with maybe some of if you're breathing into the diaphragm and using those intercostal muscles, that can help create some heat. The other thing, and keep you calm so that your body, I tell my participants this all the time. As a mammal, you warm yourself from the inside out. Your body has been passed on to you from your ancestors to keep you alive in cold environments. Your body can do it. I am fully confident that almost anyone can survive a 2-minute ice bath. It's the mind that gets in the way. It's the fear and the stress that gets in the way. But by focusing on your breathing, you can get your body to take over and do its work. And the other way it keeps you warm is a metabolic thermogenesis. So that picture right there is a picture of brown fat. Brown fat is kind of all the rage nowadays. And I'm actually part of a study where they're trying to find out how cold exposure affects brown fat that I can talk about a little later. But brown fat is the type of fat, you can't see it on your body. It hangs out kind of up in this area by the clavicles, but there's other places that it hangs out, but this is kind of one of the big areas that it hangs out. And us contemporary humans have lost a lot of our brown fat because we control our heat and our warmth with clothes and with thermostats. Babies actually have a lot more brown fat because they don't have muscles. Sorry. They don't have muscles, so they can't shiver. Shiver is another way of mechanical thermogenesis. So they have a lot of brown fat. And brown fat is very high in mitochondria. And our body can take that brown fat and actually burn it right away for heat. Whereas white fat is used for work, brown fat is used for heat. And the cool thing that they're finding out is that the more you do deliberate cold exposure, your body can turn your white fat into brown fat. And this is what scientists are very interested in right now. Not only is it a way of controlling weight loss or encouraging weight loss and boosting metabolism, but actually it can help with insulin regulation. And so people with type 2 diabetes, for example, they're trying to find out if they can recommend deliberate cold exposure as a way to help them manage their symptoms. And I do know many Wim Hofers who came to the method because of that. Chuck McGee III is probably the most famous. And so these are ways that your body takes care of you in the cold. You can start building up that brown fat by doing deliberate cold exposure, and then your body temperature again rises. And you can survive going through a 2-minute ice bath, no problem. And I always find, and you can look on my Instagram account if you want, but by the end of the 2-minute ice bath, people are smiling and very happy to be in there because they have that noradrenaline, which is a huge boost in alertness and energy, and they get a big boost in dopamine. And dopamine is that reward hormone that says, hey, good job, you finished, you're alive. And they come out of the ice bath and they're dancing all around the room. I also teach them how to warm up naturally like a mammal, as opposed to, again, we're not reptiles. We create our heat from the inside. We don't need to go sit underneath a hot lamp or get into a warm shower to warm ourselves back up. We have natural ways to do this. How am I doing on time? I'm getting a little long-winded here, aren't I? Or am I doing okay? All right. I'm going to just...
We got 20 minutes left.
Okay, cool. So I thought I'd bring up, how do you how do you do cold exposure? How should you think about it? And what is some of the research behind it? And I have a picture here of Andrew Huberman. He's the neuroscientist out of Stanford. He has a very popular podcast. And then that's Susanna Soberg. She's a Danish scientist who does a lot with metabolism, who's been studying what she calls cold water swimming or ice swimming in Denmark. And so she's kind of the leading expert on how to do deliberate cold exposure. Maybe I'll just start with her. People ask all the time, so what do I need to do to have a healthy regimen of cold exposure? And the rule of thumb is, in order to get brown fat activation, and to get the stress response is actually really good for you. So like that's where you get a lot of the positive effects of the deliberate cold exposure. 11 minutes a week is what Dr. Soberg recommends, 11 minutes. And if you can, she also recommends 54 minutes of deliberate heat. So if you can sauna, that would be awesome too. That actually also helps with the brown fat activation. Now, what type of cold exposure? They have found in studies that anything below 57 degrees can start your body's stress response to the cold. Now, it depends, just like everything else, how acclimated you are. But they did a study where they put people in a pool of water that was 57 degrees. I mean, they were in there for a long time, but they saw their metabolism shoot up 350% while they were laying in that pool of water at only 57 degrees Fahrenheit. So you actually don't need to go freezing cold to get the benefits. You also don't have to submerge yourself. You can put your hands in cold water, and that will start brown fat activation and the stress response. I tell my participants during the winter, you can take out the garbage with your shoes off. Walking barefoot in the snow is another great way to get deliberate cold exposure. Your hands and your feet are the most sensitive parts of your body, and the upper part of your face, actually. You have what's called glabrous skin there. So using your hands and your feet only in cold environments can get you the benefits. And then, of course, there is cold showers. And cold showers is probably the most common way of doing it. In general, I tell people just start slow. Do 5 seconds of cold at the end of your warm shower. And then try to add 5 seconds every couple days. Ideally, you can get up to a 2-minute cold shower and enjoy it. You can move around in the shower. You can't do that in the ice bath as much. And if you want to know the secret of why you shouldn't move around in the ice bath, I will tell you. Again, I'll hold that one for the workshop. But the shower, it's totally okay. Move around, sing, hum. These are ways that you can stay warm while you're in the shower. The kids think it's funny if you do that. And then, of course, when you get out, you can practice doing the horse stance, which is the Wim Hof method natural warm-up technique. And again, I go into that in much more detail in a workshop, but the general rule of thumb is that your skin is still cold when you get out of deliberate cold exposure. And so you want to do two things. You want to warm up naturally, send that blood back out to your limbs naturally. And you want to reintroduce actually the cold blood from your extremities mixing with the warm blood in your core. You want to introduce those two things slowly. That's why you don't get out and go run around or do push-ups. Because if you cause that blood, the cold and the warm blood, to mix too quickly, you can get what's called after drop. Now, after drop is harmless, but it's not very fun. It's kind of like when you get that really intense shivering, and you could get an intense headache. Again, it's not going to cause any damage, but it's just like not a fun way after you got all this dopamine and survived doing your cold exposure to end taking a shower, for example. So that's some basic rule of thumbs when it comes to doing deliberate cold exposure. And then, of course, don't force it. Pay attention to your body, not the clock. And if you do go into nature, I don't know if there's any lake dippers. I jump into Lake Harriet in Minneapolis twice a week throughout the whole year. So we cut a hole in the ice and we go in it at all times. I turned 40 in December, and we went out there and it was -9 in the morning when we got in that water. And the water feels very warm when it's -9 outside, which is maybe the last thing I'll say is another way you can expose your skin to get deliberate cold exposure. Everyone in Minnesota knows that. So yeah, those are some techniques. Again, safe, slow, starting with a cold shower is an excellent way to do it. And then, like I said, anyone can survive a 2-minute ice bath. Real quick, I think I've talked about many of these. It's really great for your immune system. They've shown that by doing deliberate cold exposure, especially if you're not used to it, you'll get this immediate shot of white blood cells, and that will stay in your system for up to 72 hours. So you immediately get the shot of white blood cells. That said, if you're feeling sick or under the weather, don't do your deliberate cold exposure because it stresses your immune system. But you can still do the breathing. And the other thing is that it works out your circulatory system in a really good way. So all of your capillaries and veins have these little muscles in them. And when you get into the cold, you kind of constrict all those muscles. And Wim likes to say your whole circulatory system could wrap around the world 2.5 times. So you got a lot of highway in there. And by getting in the cold, you cause that whole system kind of stress and work out and then release. And that's a really good way, just like working out any muscle, that's a really good way to strengthen a muscle. We think of cardiovascular as like working the heart all the time. This is a way of working the whole system, and doing deliberate cold exposure is an excellent way for doing that. And then maybe just lastly, I think probably most of us know that the cold is great for the bad kinds of inflammation. So it's a highly effective recovery tool to use the cold. And that's why you always see athletes with ice packs and all that other stuff. Just for the sake of time, I'll just say, like I said in the beginning, it needs to be incorporated in some regular way if you really want to see the benefits. And then, the mindset part, there's this line, feeling is believing. So you have to feel what it's like to have that oxygen starvation when you do a breath hold. You got to feel what that's like. And then you go into your recovery and you're like, okay, I survived. That's what that's like. Same thing with the cold. And you just keep on pushing that boundary in a safe way. And then you start to notice that you have more resilience under stress. And that's one of the claims of the method. And I found that it is very true. So maybe I'll just touch real quick. This is both me and Wim. Like I said, I'm part of a study right now run out of Rockefeller University where they're trying to find out if we can't measure brown fat. They haven't found a way to measure brown fat without putting you in an MRI machine, essentially. So they're looking for markers in the blood in people that do deliberate cold exposure. So they took a group of us that jump in Lake Harriet, and they drew all of our blood after our cold dipping season to see if they can find a marker that suggests that we have brown fat activation. So they're doing ongoing studies. And like I said, this is to try to help people with type 2 diabetes. And they've done similar things with Wim. That's Wim in the bottom right. They put him in a suit where they can shoot cold or warm water through it. And they put him in an MRI machine and looked at both his brain and other things going on in his body. And, Wim is a special type of guy. He can warm up his body with only his mind. So they've shown that he can tap into certain parts of his brain that most of us can't consciously tap into, some of the feeling parts of his brain. So it's like that. That's just to say that, yes, it's very much a mindfulness exercise. Like the more you do it, the more you can tap into maybe those autonomic systems. Maybe some shameless self-promotion before I get into the questions. Cindy's hosting a private workshop for all of you clients in September, and you can do signups through her. And that's in Minneapolis. That's at the yoga studio I usually work out of. I also do quarterly retreats at the Buddhist Retreat Center in southern Minnesota. It's a hidden gem of Minnesota. It's beautiful, quiet, bucolic down there. And I do that actually with another Wim Hof instructor. So you get 2 of us, and it's all inclusive and very reasonably priced. And then, like Cindy said at the beginning, I do workshops every month, and all that stuff can be found on my instructor profile. There's me at the top of Mount Sznecka in Poland. That's that's again the Vice documentary. Going back to that, the training ground that you see in Poland is where all of the instructors go to train, and the culminating exercise for some of us is hiking the mountain with our shirt off, and it's very exhilarating. And I hope to go back sometime. Thanks for listening. I'll open it up to questions. Sorry if that went a little long, but I think I got most of the big chunks in there.
Oh, that was excellent. That was wonderful. I'm just trying to see if I can get everybody back up.
No, good. There's
we go.
people.
Yeah, we've got people. So would love to open up with any questions that you didn't get to ask during Nick's presentation. I took a ton of notes. I think that, I mean, very practical information and just really helping us understand the health benefits and metabolic benefits and aging benefits. So thank you for doing that in such a tactile and easy to implement way.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Questions?
Sorry, I have a question. So as a self-proclaimed freeze baby, the thought of like wearing no coat out in the winter, like I've eased into like cold showers and like have even this winter gotten into like I'll go outside barefoot and stuff. But how do you, like if you're out hiking and stuff, how do you not get frostbite on, you know, like fingertips and noses and stuff?
Yeah. Well, you know, you should always check the frostbite grid before you go out to make sure that the wind chill is not going to give you frostbite. But believe it or not, the wind is not nearly as intense as the water. So you can actually survive, especially in a sports bra or with your shirt off, for much longer than you could in an ice bath. The other thing is cover up your hands, wear a hat, wear shoes. That's totally legit. And I've just found, you know, people ask me all the time, well, you keep yourself calm and you warm yourself up. You know, you build yourself up for it. But when I climbed that mountain, I had my shirt off for at least 2 hours, and it was, I mean, it's a ski mountain. There's people walking by in full regalia with ski masks and everything. Yeah, all I can say is that it works, but you know, I would definitely keep your, you know, even when Wim did his antics, you might say, in the on Everest, he got frostbite on his toes. So it's not like it doesn't happen. But you know, just because we cut off circulation to the extremities, cover up your hands, cover up your feet, wear a hat. Your hat, I mean, as a Boy Scout, we all learn to wear a hat in cold weather because you lose so much heat through your head. So same thing actually goes. So wear a hat, keep that heat in there. And I'm like super confident that you can keep your core warm and that you won't get frostbite on the major parts of your body. And like I said, I'm going to try to do, what is it? Is it Eagle Mountain in Duluth? Eagle something mountain in Duluth. I'm going to try to lead a group up there this upcoming winter. That's my goal. So, and I took a group on a illegal Wim Hof shirtless hike. It was all voluntary this past winter in February, but it was in February, but it was like unseasonably warm. It was like 40 degrees. The sun was out. We were all laughing. It was a good time. So all that to say, I don't have like a scientific answer for you. All I can say from experience, if you protect your extremities, in general, I have seen that people can keep their core from getting frostbite. In reasonable, you know, I mean, I was on a mountain with wind chill. That was definitely below freezing, but you know, nothing like 40 below stuff. Don't do stuff like that.
That makes sense.
But that's awesome to hear that you're taking off your shoes and walking in the snow. Snow angels with your in swimsuits. That's a great way to start too.
Awesome. Thank you. This was really, really informative, really exciting.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, I have, thank you. It's been very informative and interesting. We just heard about the Wim Hof method, and got the book and not through it or anything, but we were, somebody recommended to do the shower. And I was dancing around, my instincts were right there.
And singing.
And singing, I believe opera at points.
Yeah.
But I don't know how cold it got, but I noticed the biggest thing for me was that I have a mindset that I gotta be cozy. I'm living in Minnesota and always dressed in layers and I realized that that was kind of limiting, self-limiting. So I think it's it's great to break those barriers of thinking and that there's more potential, even though both of us are in our 70s. You also were singing, right?
Yes, I was.
Yeah, in the shower. We were cracking each other up, so it was pretty funny. But I was wondering, like at these workshops, the one you're planning in September, is it both of you or yeah? What's going to be going on there? I
Oh,
don't
good
know if
question.
I'm ready for any ice bath or I don't know, I
Yeah.
try to be open and
Um,
but
Yeah.
the
Well,
breathing sounds great off, we have theater backgrounds and breathing is great. And I'm a natural shallow breather. So
okay.
I appreciate what you said about breathing.
Cool. Yeah. No, great question. The workshops, I walk you through how to do diaphragmatic breathing. I lead you through 4 rounds of the Wim Hof breathing. And I tell people, even if you've been doing the Wim Hof breathing by yourself for years, you come to one of my workshops, it's going to be a different experience when you both breathe with other people and when you let me guide you. Because I do it with music and just just the way I like move you through it is going to be different than doing it on an app or by yourself. Then I go through more science and theory, kind of like I just did. And then I prepare you for an ice bath. And there's usually some really positive energy and cohesiveness as a group. And it's voluntary ice bath. But so far, everyone that's done it has lasted 2 minutes. And some people are smiling after 2 minutes and say, can I stay in for another minute? Because in the paradox of being a mammal and living in the body is that because we heat ourselves from the inside out, when you give the stress of the cold from the outside, you start to warm up from the inside. And so it's really a beautiful thing to see. Just like you put yourself in a sauna, you start to cool down from the inside. So it's really, I tell people, if you want to be warm, you got to embrace the cold. If your hands are cold, go grab some frozen vegetables from the freezer, and that will cause your body to be like, oh, I got to warm that area. So, and that's what I didn't bring up hormetic stressor, but that's what a hormetic stressor is that it causes some action to happen. Your body's like, oh, I need to fix this. So it gets it moving. And that's what the cold can do. So, yeah, I mean, I'm just always so excited. Like people come in like, I don't know if I can do the ice bath. And I'm like, oh yeah, wait. Like usually they're the first people in line to try it. So, and it's really fun. It's really fun.
Okay, even if
It
you're
sounds
like
fun.
in your 70s.
Yeah. So that 76-year-old Bonnie, man, she is a
Okay.
fire plug. I mean, she goes in the lake now. She goes in Lake Harriet. So, and she's doing all this winter dipping. And let me
So it's
say,
something to try and listen to your body. And if it says get out fast or whatever, get out, right?
well, your body is going to say get out fast, but you prepare for that because your body's going to say that. And that's that next level of consciousness I'm talking about. Your body's going to say it. And then you use that energy to stay calm as opposed to using that energy to flight. You use it to fight. And actually, you don't fight the cold, you give into the cold, and you'll find that the cold can be your warm friend. That's actually what we say. The cold can be your warm friend because your body has the capability to take care of you in that environment. It's just that we don't tap into it anymore. We don't tap into it. And really, when you start tapping into it, all these really beautiful things start to happen inside. So
Great, excellent. Thank you. Wonderful.
mm-hmm.
So it might be a good place to ask my question.
Yeah.
I'm really curious, Nick. 55 years ago, February, I was at 2 Field Force, Benoit, Vietnam, in the middle of a Tet offensive, and we were totally unprepared for the attack. We were in a bunker with no top. Charlie was launching ground attacks. We were under siege for about 4 days, and they brought in napalm and the Agent Orange, and I was physically sprayed with Agent Orange.
Mm.
I had it all over my body. Thankfully, I was a water truck driver, so I low crawled from the perimeter all the way to the showers, but there was no hot water because we couldn't light the fires to get the water hot, so we had cold. I got a cold shower, and I knew that I had to get that off of me. I didn't know that it was long term like we're experiencing. I just knew at that point that I wanted it off. And I could hardly stand the water, but I did get it off, and I low crawled back to the bunker, and I'm really grateful that I did. I wonder if what you think about that, as far as like what the cold might have done, and why I had no Agent Orange symptoms in 55 years. So
Well, that's good to hear.
I mean, is it a miracle, or is it cold water?
Are there cold water to close all his pores? Or?
Yeah, well, that does happen. So we have 10 times more receptors on our skin for cold than we do for heat. So we're much more sensitive to cold, and our body actually does like the skin does close up and protect you when you're in the cold. So that does happen. And the other thing I was thinking as you were telling that story was that some people have traumatic experiences from younger times or from earlier times in their life that makes the cold especially difficult. One of the first guys I gave an ice bath to said his parents used to make him take cold showers as punishment when he was younger. So it's like, okay, I'm telling you it's good for you, whereas it was used as punishment when you were younger. So that's just another thing we have to focus on before we get into the ice bath. And I really do focus on preparation, because if you can prepare yourself for the stressor, then the shock of it is not going to catch you off guard. And that's actually probably, you want your body to go through the shock, but you don't want your mind to go through the shock. Well, it sounds like maybe that you knew that too, that the heaters weren't on, so you were going to get a cold shower when you're rinsing off the Agent Orange. But yeah.
Thanks.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, hopefully that was helpful.
Thank you.
I had a question. If you were gonna commit to this, and how long would it take per day? Because you like get up in the morning, do the 4 rounds of breathing, then you take your cold shower, and you want to warm up naturally. It's not like you can come out of the cold shower and immediately start drying your hair with your hot hair dryer. So how much time does that take? So what would that whole morning routine look like?
Yeah. So the breathing only takes 15 to 20 minutes. Like I said, 3 to 4 rounds takes 15 to 20 minutes. So that doesn't take long. And really, I mean, I get up, I do a Bolt score real quick, which means I test my CO2 levels, and then I warm up my neck, I warm up my shoulders, I do 50 push-ups, and then I go into my breathing on my front porch, because I like doing it in nature, like the birds are out, all that stuff. So I like doing it there. But yeah, that routine should only take 20, 25 minutes at the most. And then cold shower, like I said, you only have to go up to about 2 minutes to really get the benefits. Like your whole circulatory system will be charged after 2 minutes. So, and then what I teach in the workshops is if you do 2 minutes of cold exposure, make sure you're doing 4 minutes of natural warm-up techniques. So it's a 2-to-1 ratio in general. So it's not that much. I think you're going to find though, during the summer, it's like you get out, he's like, wow, I feel great. Maybe, if you notice your hands take longer to warm up, you can keep your hands out while you're doing your cold shower. It's not the end of the world. So yeah, I mean, the winter, obviously it takes a lot longer to warm back up, but yeah, hopefully that's how, like, I say 1 to 2 ratio. So however long you do the cold exposure, give yourself twice as long to warm back up, with the expectation that maybe the extremities, depending what type of cold exposure you're doing, might take a little longer. I'll admit it. When I go and jump in the lake, it sometimes takes me like 45 minutes to get back to like fully normal, but I feel great the whole time. Like I feel happy, and I'm so glad I did it and everything, even though, like, my pinky's still cold or whatnot. So
What about people that have Raynaud's syndrome, where their hands and feet get super cold? What happens to them?
Yeah, no, again, it's as long as you don't have there's different types. As long as you don't have type 2, again, it's rather harmless. Like it's not gonna do anything. It's just your hands are gonna turn white. And it can be like a little numb. Just be aware of that. When I go in the lake in the really cold parts of the winter, I wear neoprene booties and gloves, so you can cover up your hands, and you don't dip your head, so you can just protect against that. And then, if it's bad or it's distracting, just wear the gloves in the shower too, or keep the hands out in the shower, or same thing with the ice bath. Keep the hands out and put on booties. Yeah, again, I've got some other secrets that I can tell you during the workshops, but like in general, you should be doing the cold exposure for getting the mental and physical health benefits, not doing it so that you're like creating pain that distracts you from trying to get into your system, get into the way your body's reacting to the cold. So
Sure. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate again, Nick, for you coming. I mean, holy cow, wealth of knowledge and just really practical advice and tips. And so in regards to the workshop that's coming up in September, I'll be sending out more details on that. But we do want pre-registration by July 15 so that we can lock that in. So if it is something that you're looking towards joining me on, just go ahead and email me and say, hey, reserve a spot. So that's a Saturday. It's a Saturday on September 23rd. So hope to see you guys there. I am super excited, and I'm going to try to recruit my husband to join, and who knows who else that we can get. So really think about those who would really benefit as well from what Nick had to share in regards to the health benefits. And I think about you, TJ, wondering, like, I mean, you certainly jacked up your white blood cells by doing cold. So maybe you just really boosted your immune system to like knock out Agent Orange. We can say lots of stories. But again, thank you so much, Nick. I'll have this recording on the YouTube channel for Lockhart Wellness. And again, I will share more information coming up about the workshop. There'll be more information in the newsletter, then also coming out through other sources like Healthy. So thank you for coming, for being here tonight, and for asking questions. And so Nick, again, thank you.
yeah, of course.
thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. I was going to say, my favorite was I had people come for the 20th anniversary to one of my workshops. People have come to one workshop and then they bring their girlfriend to the next workshop. So there's been a lot of positive bonding at the workshops. It's a way of doing something hard with your partner that you get to tell everyone about, and you feel great afterwards. So yeah, I look forward to seeing some of you there.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to it. So thank you again for offering that. All
Mhm.
right, everyone, have a great
you.
night, and I can't wait to hear about your cold exposure. And
Be
debrief.
safe.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.